Hey, welcome everybody. How are you doing today? And how you doing today? Woo! All right. Big game today. Liverpool-Chelsea. Y'all watching? Okay. Anyway, that's what I thought. So here's what's really weird. By the way, my name's Bob. If you're new here, I'm kind of in charge of like life groups, and I'm a 7th grade history teacher. And it's really weird. They put this, like, Dorian, our pastor, made this little stage. And I do think it's a conspiracy to squash me because when I speak, I move a little bit, right? I can only go to here. So I'm just telling you, if I fall off, someone please come and help me because, you can laugh. It's good. But anyway, I think they really is trying to. Supposedly the camera on Dorian never moves, but when I'm like up here, the camera's like this, right? So anyway, we'll see what happens. We'll try it out. Hopefully I have good insurance, right? By the way, it's coming up, it's Palm Sunday, and it's like we're getting ready for Easter, and I'm excited about that. Palm Sunday, when I grew up in the Catholic Church, that palm was just, I always got in trouble, right? Because I was always smacking the person in front of me, so please don't do that. But if your neighbor or someone in front of you is falling asleep, I give you permission to tickle their ear or something just to keep them awake. So, hey guys, before we start, is Sharon here? I saw Sharon. Sharon? Yeah, there she is. So we celebrated this week Sharon's birthday. I'm not going to say what year because I was taught never to tell a woman's age, but it was one of those big milestones. And here's the deal. We were invited to a Mexican restaurant, and we were told you have to wear purple. Because if you don't know, Sharon's a big Prince fan. Like, did you know that? Right? So, as good Christians, we did what we were told. We wore purple. And I mean, nothing says Prince like a Mexican restaurant. I mean, it just seems to fit, right? So anyway, here we are. And like, she brought her own like life-size cardboard cutout of Prince. And we know he's life-size because we Googled it. And he really is 5'2", right? So anyway, I have to tell you, I love you, Sharon. Really happy birthday. But if you own your own cardboard cutout of Prince, there may be some issues. So anyway, happy birthday, Sharon. We are so glad you're here. Today we're talking about standing out, and really, Sharon, I put that up because you do stand out in good ways. So, all right, here we go. Yeah, absolutely. Happy birthday. Woohoo! All right. All right, so here we go, guys. We're finishing up this series called Stand, this idea that we should be standing for what's right. In other words, we're going to find out how do we stand out in the right ways at the right time for the right reasons. Because when we do that, we're going to see that our life, like the direction of our life will change dramatically. And of course, if we do the opposite, right? If we compromise on the wrong things at the wrong time for the wrong reasons, well, then we're going to suffer, or like there'll be a cost to that. And the whole series is this idea. We ask this question: how can we make a stand for what matters most? Right? There's all things to make stands for, and there's good ones, right? Good causes. But what matters most is what this series is about. And so in the book of Daniel, we've been learning about when it's right, like you need to stand up for the truth and stand up what's right for injustices. We've talked about standing in faith in your prayer. And we've talked about standing firm in the fire because we know the story of Daniel, right? And all that. And so in the book of Daniel, guys, and today we're focusing on standing out. So as Christians, as followers of Jesus, we should be different. We should be seen different, heard different. Not that we're better, but we should have a different standard, and that's what we're going to talk about. And in the book of Daniel, as we've been learning, there were the chosen people, the Israelites, were captured. It's known as the Babylonian captivity, and they are taken, right, by the Chaldeans, led by King Nebuchadnezzar, which is a pretty funny name. You imagine in middle school, they're like, hey, Nebby, right? Nebby, get in. I hang out with middle school kids. Funny name, but he's not a funny dude. This guy's like seriously evil. He was a bad dude. And he destroyed, right? He didn't just capture the Jewish people. He destroyed Jerusalem, which was their capital city. And he actually burns down the temple, right? The temple of God. But before he burns it, he takes all of those religious items that were used to worship Yahweh, the one true God of the universe, and he destroys them, crushes them. He's basically saying to the Jewish people, like, oh, your God, he's little. Like, he doesn't matter, right? He's insignificant. I mean, Nebuchadnezzar was trying to really wipe out this religion and this whole culture of people. He's got a plan to do that, and not only does he destroy, like, the present day, he actually has a plan to destroy their future. And that's what Daniel's kind of about. Like, the king's like, I'm going to get you now, but I'm also going to make sure that you never grow as a culture again. And so let's read in Daniel 1:3-4 what he says. or what kind of leads to this story. It says, then the king ordered Ashpenaz. That's a good name, right? You imagine him in middle school? Hey, Ashpence, big Ashpence, big Ash. I'm so sorry, guys. I promise you that's what my seventh graders would say. We'll just call him Ash, right? So anyway, the king ordered Ash, the chief of the court officials, to bring into the king's a service of the Israelites from the royal family and the nobility, which is important, that noble part. Young men without any physical defect, handsome, showing aptitude for every kind of learning, well-informed, quick to understand, qualified to serve in the king's palace. I feel like I fit all of those, right? Yeah? My wife doesn't even look at me. All right. He says, and he was then to teach them the language and literature of the Babylonians. So here's the plan. Get all the good-looking, really smart guys that would be voted most likely to succeed, and they're noble. That's pretty important. They're the future leaders of the Jewish people because they're noble. And he says, we're going to take them and we're going to indoctrinate them. They're going to learn our literature. They're going to speak like us, think like we do, right? Get the sharpest and the brightest sons and indoctrinate them into being Babylonian, right? And then here's what it says. He's going to take it another step farther. And so verse 5, it says, the king assigned them a daily amount of food and wine from the king's table, knowing that the Jewish people are very strict in what they can eat and how to prepare their food. But he says, hey, you're going to eat from the king's table, which to me sounds pretty good because I bet the king eats pretty well, right? I know there's steak involved. I'm just saying. At least I imagine it. All right, so then they were to be trained for 3 years, and after that, they were to enter the king's service. So he's saying here, you're not just going to learn what we, read what we read and speak like we speak, but you're going to eat like we eat, right? And you're going to eat well. And you're going to get me in my stomach. If you feed me, I'll probably come, okay? And so he knows what's happening. Like the king, he's got this together. It's an intentional and strategic plan to indoctrinate these guys, to change their future. He said, you're going to think like a Babylonian, speak like a Babylonian, behave like a Babylonian, eat like a Babylonian. Sounds like a song, doesn't it? You know where I'm going, right? Going to walk like a Babylonian. If you're under 30, you have no clue, right? Remember when MTV used to play music videos and I think it was Egyptian though, right? All right. Is this thing on? Anyway. I'm just warming up, I swear it. All right. But seriously, I think that's what the devil does with us too. Like he begins to make us think like he does, like the world does, and speak like he does and behave like he does. And then with the devil, the things of the world, the fleshy things feel good, don't they? And we just begin to talk like it and walk like it and listen to that music and look at those things that look good, right? And the devil wants to just have us disregard and ignore what God has for us. The one true God of the universe that created us. He wants us to ignore that standard, that plan that God has, this kingdom plan that God has, and settle for a lower standard, right? And so that's why Dorian's been talking about this idea of Ephesians 6 and put on the armor of God, because it is a spiritual battle, us against the spirit, the evil forces of the devil. And so we got to put it on, right? And put it on. And it doesn't say if you're going to have to stand, it says when. So you will have those issues. The devil is trying to destroy each and every one of us. And if you're a believer, he's trying to destroy us he's at overtime trying to do that, right? So here's what we got to be careful of too. It's this idea of being a sort of Christian, like a casual, lukewarm Christian that the Bible talks about. It's this idea of being a cultural Christian. I've heard even people say being a red cup Christian. So you're at church on Sunday, but drinking them red cups, partying on the night before, right? So we have to be careful, and I'm not judging anybody, but to be honest, I think, America, Christian nation, are we really? I think people say they're Christian, but are we living it? And in the last 100 or even 200 years, have we really been a Christian nation? When you think of all the injustices and all the things that are not just today, but in our past, I wonder if we're just some of us, even maybe in the room here, and that's cool, right? Because God's got a bigger plan for us. But it's this idea I believe in God, the big guy upstairs. You hear that in movies all the time. They never say Jesus, but oh yeah, the big guy upstairs. Or hey, Jesus, he's my homie, right? He's my homeboy, right? I come to church on Easter, Christmas, whenever. I'm a good person. That's that kind of casual Christian. And so you would ask the question, are there any outward or visible signs? Is there any growth spiritually, right? Are things happening to you and to the people around you? Are they transformed because you know Jesus? And I think many people are like, well, I mean, I'm a good person. I give money once in a while, right? I'm going to earn my way into heaven. I think I'm a good guy, right? But the reality is, guys, we should be different. When we stand out as a believer in Jesus, we should be different. Not that we're better in people when we judge people, because Christians do that too, don't they? But it's like they should see us differently and hear us differently, right? But the reality is, guys, Christians divorce just as much as non-Christians. And I'm not getting you, I'm divorced too, right? And young, people have sex before they're married. Christians just as much as non-Christians. Teenagers get pregnant that are Christian just as much as non-Christians, right? I mean, we're really, as Christians, we're not necessarily showing that we are, right? And there is no evidence that Christians give more than non-Christians. There's not. In fact, the last time I looked, average Christian, it's less than 5% of Christians actually tithe, okay? And so we should be different. People should see us, see the joy in us, see the way we treat others, the way we stand for things and have integrity. And they should want to be drawn to Jesus, but also just drawn to us because they want to have that. Okay? It sets us apart. And I think it's impossible to be a cultural or casual Christian and really have any kind of spiritual success, right? Because it takes a little bit of work, and it definitely takes building a relationship with God. It'd be like me, this is funny, going to the gym, which is funny in itself, but one day a year, given I don't even know what it looked like this probably. So go to the gym for one day a year and expecting these great results. Woo, look at me, one day a year. I'll see you next year, right? Or it'd be like me telling my wife, Peggy, I love you, one day a year, right? You know what I mean? You think that's enough? We had our anniversary yesterday, 17 years. Woo. Do you think it's okay for me to say I love you? And then I'll tell her next year at this time, April 13th. Probably not, right? We should be different, guys. And the whole idea of going to church, like you go to church for just an hour, some of you 50 minutes, you're a little late. Anyway. And some of you, it's an hour and 10, like when I'm speaking, it might be a little longer, I apologize. But anyway, you can't just go to church for like an hour during the week and be like, that's it, I'm good. Because remember, Sunday's supposed to be where we get inspired. It's inspiration. And then Monday's supposed to be application, where you take what you learn here, the Word of God, and then people should see it throughout the week, right? You got to walk in our faith. So sometimes, guys, we have to take a stand for what matters most in the right way, at the right time, and for the right reasons, right? And I believe this to be true. And this may sound harsh, and this isn't just for you guys, it's for me too. But if you are never standing out, and always blending in, because blending in is easy, isn't it? Standing out is hard. It's tough. But if you are never standing out and always blending in, you are not really committed to following Christ. I would argue that. I hope that convicts some of us, right? Because when you follow Christ, you will be different. You'll be holy. The word holy means set apart, right? God says you're set apart. And sometimes you just have to stand out. So as a teacher at a public school, I've been 14 years there. I can't go and preach. I do teach history, so I get a chance to talk a little bit about, the Israelites and Jesus and stuff. But it's, I can't preach it. But I think I stand out. I'm not bragging on myself, but, from the very start when I got to this school, I just made it clear I'm a church guy. I'm a Christian, right? And I've tried to live it out, and I mess up a lot. But because of that, standing out, teachers come and they need prayer. And they come to me, and they probably go to other teachers too, but they come to my room, and just in the last 2 weeks, there's 2 teachers, one of them is not even a believer, but asked for me to pray because they've got a major health, like cancer kind of stuff, scary stuff. I've had, people who weren't believers, hey, will you pray for my marriage? It's messed up. And it isn't because I'm awesome or anything, well, I am, but but I think it's because I've tried to stand out, and I try just to kind of live that standard that God would have us live, and people just trust it, even if they don't believe in God. All right, so let's get back into Daniel. All right, so the king, he's got these plans. He's got these young guys, they're good looking. He changes the way they eat and change what they listen to, or what they speak. Then he does this. He says, among those who were chosen, this is verse 6 and 7. He says, among those who were chosen were some from Judah. And by the way, Judah and Israel, like Israel split in two, if you don't know this. And because it's split, is actually why they were weakened, and the Chaldeans were able to conquer them. You hear that little history teacher in me? I just had to say it, sorry. Anyway, here's what he does. He says he chose some of those guys. So Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. I'm not sure if I'm saying them right. Just go with me. All right. So the chief official then gave them new names. Right? He's changing their names. To Daniel, the name Belteshazzar. To Hananiah, Shadrach. To Mishael, Meshach. And to Azariah, Abednego. And it's not like he changed their names to make them easier. Those are actually harder to say. Like, can't they just say, hey, Bob? Right? But that isn't why he changed their name, right? The chief official, Chief Ash, right? He changed their names to change their identity, like to who they are. And we don't know for sure, but it's kind of guessed that these boys were like 12 to 15, and they had been stripped of their identity. They'd been moved 1,000 or more miles from their home, right? Losing their dignity. And the king wants to change their name because their original names were given by their parents, and they represent the worship of who? Yahweh, the one true God of the universe. And the king's saying, we're going to change your name to names that actually represent our pagan gods. So every time I call your name, you're going to be reminded of not your God, but our gods. Right? And King Nebuchadnezzar, he just knew what he was doing. He's really indoctrinating, kind of like brainwashing them, if you will. Right? And then the king goes one step further, and he's going to change their diet. Right? He's going to give them what's off of the king's table. And there is a problem with that, because the meat and wine is not dedicated to Yahweh, it's dedicated to the pagan gods. And Daniel and his squad, his guys, they want to honor and respect God. Here's what it says in verse 8, because he's pretty smart. It says, but Daniel resolved not to defile himself with the royal food and wine, and he asked the chief official for permission not to defile himself this way. He didn't fight back when his name was changed. He's like, I'm cool, you can call me whatever you want, because I know who I am. All right? That's cool. I know in my heart that doesn't define me. Right? I'll always honor and serve my God, but my name, I don't even know that it's worth standing up for, but my God's name is. It's absolutely worth standing up for. Right? And you ain't going to insult him. And at that point, I'm taking a stand. But he's also wise about it. He doesn't just like get all mad and, this is a king. This king could put him to death like that, right? But Daniel's wise, and he says, He like predetermines a resolution. Let me be wise and smart about this. He predecided what he was going to do and not do before he was even tempted. Like he had a bar that says, I'm going to do these things and not do these things, always. Because if he hadn't, and if we don't, when the temptation is put there, because that food on that table, I'm sure, looked good, right? But if we've already predecided that's one thing I won't do, then it made it easier for him, okay? And I know, I'm telling you, the compromise and the rationalizing that I would have done at that point would have been, well, come on, man, the guy's got to eat. Come on, just this one time. You ever done this? You ever said this? Just one? Hey, man, the other Jewish guys are eating it. It's all right. Yeah, it's not a big deal. God will forgive me. Which he will. But these guys had a standard. Daniel and them, he had predetermined or predecided in his heart, right, that before he got tempted, he already knew what he was going to do. And I think our spiritual success, our growth depends on that, knowing what you will do and not do. So, for example, this idea of not having sex before you're married, right, because God asked us to do that. Well, before I was a Christian, I wasn't sexually pure, not at all. But then when I became a Christian, that changed. Now I'm predetermined, right, in that world of, I was divorced and now dating, I'm just not having sex until I get married. And that's why Peggy and I didn't date very long. Sorry, honey. Anyway. Happy anniversary. All right. Guys, I used to, before I was a Christian, I used to drink like crazy. Like I drank like a rock star because I wanted to be one. So much so that rock stars are like, dude, man, chill. And then when God saved me from the alcohol, I had to predetermine, I'm not, at least for now, I can't go to the bars. I actually can't even play in a rock band right now because that lifestyle is killing me. I had to let go of those guys, those friends, and I had to predetermine, here's my bar, and if I'm anywhere around alcohol, I'm in trouble. So I'm just not gonna be around it. And I'm okay now, but it took I really had to predecide that. Okay? And then things at work, as you know it, people gossip, they complain. I do that a little bit, right? But they'll gossip and they'll talk about people or bash the boss. And I have predetermined I'm not going to do that. And just recently I had a teacher, good person, but she was angry and she was starting to bash another teacher. And I don't know that I did it as lovingly as I should have. I'm like, hey, stop. Like, she's not here. She's a human. You can't talk about her like that. And it was hard because that person then walked away in tears and was mad at me. And we're good now, but that was hard. But that's, hey, I'm not going to gossip. I'm just not going to do it, right? And the whole idea of going to church, like to me, I pre-decided I'm going to go to church every weekend, not because God's up in heaven, like making a list, woo, Bob's there, right? It's because I've decided it brings me closer to him. And I love to worship. And now, this last year, I've been able to hit the drums and worship God pounding those things. And it's part of what I've decided I'm going to do, right? And other examples would be like on YouTube. Guys, for me personally, like pornography is not a problem, but it is for many people. But I can really be sucked into what's just on YouTube. Like you can be like looking at something for school or for even here at church, and then there'll be some artist. Like you can't watch a music video today without just being blown away with what's being shown, right? Some woman in like barely wearing anything, and it's crazy. So I have to pre-decide that that's something that my flesh wants to see, and it's not good. It's not good for me and Peggy. It's not good for me in my relationship with God. So I have to take that history off of YouTube. So when you look at my YouTube, there's nothing down the right that says, hey, if you like this, try this. Because there's always something I don't want. And so, or that it's not good for me. I predetermined that. And another example is at school, all the language arts and the social studies teachers in the entire district are going through this training. And it's not my favorite thing in the world, and it's really hard. And I'm behind. It's a language arts thing, and I'm a social studies guy. But it's like, 8 hours per unit, and there's 8 units, and I'm a little behind. And I've had a couple teachers say, look, I'll take the test for you. And I'm like, and I want them to. Let me tell you, I just want to. And it's nice they offered, right? But I can't do it. And so I'm like, no, it's not right. And just like last week, a teacher asked me, and I said, no, I can't. She goes, I knew you were going to say that. Wow, that felt good, right? Because I've stood out. There's enough about me that she knows, and she's not a believer, but there's enough about me that she's like, oh, yeah, I knew you weren't going to do it. So that feels good, right? Because here's the deal, guys. If you are never standing out and you're always just blending in, you're not always following Christ, right? So Daniel and his dudes, his bros, they're like, we're going to not eat this food. I know it seems like a little one-time event. Hey, we're just not eating tonight. But this was every day, every week, every month. We're just not eating it. Like this was a big, huge decision for breakfast, lunch, dinner. We're just not going to eat your food. And so it's a huge decision that was predetermined, but really changed the course of history, if you think about it, okay? See, when you're fully following Christ, you grow closer to him, and the more you stand out, like you're not ashamed of what he's done. I said, when you're afraid to tell somebody about Jesus, well, the more you draw to him, you realize, man, that cross, like I'm not ashamed of that at all. I'm excited to tell other people about it. As scary as it is, I'm going to stand out for that. Right? So we got to stay close. So let's keep going into Daniel in verses 12 through 15. Daniel's pretty smart, right? Because he knows the king can kill him. So he's like, look, check this out. Please test your servants for 10 days. Give us nothing but vegetables to eat and water to drink. So time out. I can't do that part. Because those who know me, I haven't had a vegetable since 1970 something. And I'm not kidding. And I know my wife is over here thinking, we're going to memorize this verse, all right? But I've been taking vitamins, so maybe I'm okay, right? But anyway, he says, look, we're not going to eat anything but vegetables and water to drink. Then compare our appearance to that of the young men who did eat the royal food, the meat and all the good stuff, and treat your servants in accordance with what you see. And so he agreed to this and tested them. Pretty smart. He's like, just check it out. And of course, God's with him through all this. He's going to make sure, right, that everything works out. Daniel has wisdom, and he didn't protest and like, we're not going to eat. He's just like, no, I'm going to respect your authority, but let's try this. Maybe there's a solution to this. Let's just check it out. Pretty smart. And then, of course, in verse 15, at the end of the 10 days, they looked healthier and better nourished than any of the young men who ate the royal food. I know Peggy's like, yep, see? Someday. All right. So you can stand out for the right things in the right way for the right reasons. And he did it the right way and the right reasons. But sometimes we might stand up for things that are right, but we do it wrong. And many Christians are guilty of it, right? And I'm not beating them up, but some Christians are just really judging in what they do. And so they'll be on Facebook or they'll do these things that are like the Bible police, right? It's good intentions, but it's not always done in the loving way, the way Jesus would do it, right? And they're angry all the time. It's like the megaphone dude. Every time I go to a FC Cincinnati soccer game, on either side of the building, there's guys with the megaphone telling me, you're all gonna burn in hell, right? You know those guys, right? By the way, there's a drop-off here. I swear, if I fall, you're going to help me, right? Whew. But anyway, I got nothing against it, man. Like, bless those guys because they've made a decision. They're going to speak the word of the gospel. But that just is maybe, for me at least, not the best way because it's kind of like, I don't know, it seems a little abrasive. In fact, my way to help bring someone, when I'm at the FC game like I went last week, I brought one of my friends who's not a believer, who's struggling and drinking, he has a drinking issue, and I'm just going to love him in relationship. I'm not going to scream at him. But anyway, sometimes we have to do things in the right way and be wise like Daniel was wise, okay? And so what do? We got to ask God, hey, is this my fight? Like, is it my time to stand? Because sometimes it is, and sometimes it's not. Sometimes God just wants you to just be quiet, and he'll take care of it. Other times he's like, stand up, right? Stand up, stand out. All right. So, at school, and I know you guys, every time I'm up here, I talk about school. I'm going to do it again because I'm on this cool stage, whatever. Anyway, at school, I've had a really hard year. It's been the last 3 years, but this year's been really tough. I'm not going to get into all the details, but it's been a challenge. Oh, and by the way, Mr. Knox, he's a good friend. He's in my classroom a couple of bells of the day. I'm really excited you're here. And he can tell you, he knows the struggles that we've experienced in a room with 50 kids and 2 teachers trying to teach 2 different subjects kind of at the same time. It's been horrible, and he knows. But on my chalkboard, these didn't all happen at once. Well, first of all, on the left, I got my little Doric Greek column because I'm a history teacher. And then that number, that's how many days of school are left. Which actually, it's 28 on Monday, tomorrow. Guys, I have never counted this. Usually the last 10 days. I've been counting since the 90s. Like, it's been that kind of year. But anyway, top right, our life group was reading, doing this book on Philippians, and it was talking about the joy of the Lord. And in Philippians 2:14, 15, it says, Paul's like, stop complaining. So Paul's writing from jail. Right? Like I think my life's hard. He's writing from a Roman jail and he says, look, stop complaining and be like a shining star to others. I'm like, wow, that speaks to me because I got to stop complaining about my job that I can't stand because I know my students and my teachers around me are hearing it. So I drew the star and I point to it. And John will tell you, some days he'll just come up and be like, he'll just point at the star like, dude, you're not doing it, right? and I appreciate that because we've got to help each other. And then I wrote Ephesians 2:10 on the board because this reminds me of who I really am because I'm struggling in like my voice as a teacher and my calling anymore. And so that tells me that Ephesians 2:10 says that we were made by God to be a masterpiece, to do his good works. And that's reminding me why I exist, okay? Because this teaching thing is killing me right now. And then, of course, the heart God, heart people, when they ask Jesus what's the 2 important, commandments, he's like, well, you got to love God with your whole heart, your whole soul, your whole mind, right? And to love your neighbor. And it's really hard to love 7th graders sometimes. And so that helps me remind. So that's up on the board just to help me stand out. Because I'm telling you, I've been ambushed by the devil all year, and he is trying to get me to lower my standards. And I really feel like the devil's trying to get me to do something I regret that will actually get me fired or worse, who knows, right? So that's kind of that place I'm at. And one interesting thing, if you go to the next picture, is outside our door, there's a sign. It says designated place of refuge. And what's funny about it is somebody spent money, somebody made the sign, and then had to get paid to glue it on the wall outside our door. It's the only sign that I know of. Have you ever seen another one, John? It's on the 2nd floor, so it can't be refuge from a tornado. Nobody told me or us why that sign's there. But our room is a place of refuge. And I don't know, are there refugees from Cambodia come? I don't understand that. But here's what I think, and I'm just sticking with it, okay? I think that refuge, right, it's because the Spirit of God's in the room. It's not because of me, right? But when John and I are in that room, we're talking about Jesus. And every morning I invite the Holy Spirit to come. And you guys know, if you're a believer, the Spirit, the same Spirit that rose Jesus from the dead is in us. And so I just ask, right? Come on, just be in this room. And it's not a place of refuge if you walk in, because there's nothing calm about 50, 12-year-olds in a room, right? But teachers come in, and John will tell you, some teachers that are like subs or don't have somewhere to go, they'll just come and sit in our room. I don't know why, but we're a place of refuge, and I think it's just a calming place. And I think that's because the people that are in that room are standing out, right? So now let me get into this school thing, and this would be a little bit hard for me to do, but I have worked at Whitten Woods for 14 years. It was definitely a calling. So it's more than just a job, right? This was a calling God put on me and Peggy's heart. I had to go back to school and get my undergrad, and pretty special place. And it's not just a job. It's like where my mom and my stepmom taught, okay? And we live like 3 blocks from it. And I'm teaching at the building that was my high school. So, you know what I mean? This is a pretty special place. And there are teachers in that building that were my teachers when I was in high school. So it's a special place. But we've been praying, Peggy and I, for the last 3 years, and God has released me from this place. And it's bittersweet, right? Because it's been heavy, right? All that stuff on that board was heavy. But here's the deal. I officially 2 weeks ago put in writing my resignation, right? I wasn't able to say that because I hadn't done it yet, but now I have. And, I'm not exactly sure how I feel about it, except for we are trusting God, because I don't have anything lined up yet. I got some ideas. But we're trusting God's got this, okay? And so, yeah, I'm excited and scared and all that. But here's the thing that's kind of a negative in that world. So state testing, yay. And every subject in the state of Ohio gives a test, even music and art and gym. And that test is what then evaluates us as teachers. And so then we're on record from kids taking a test on on some day, and it says what we are. And if you'll show the next slide, here are those. I don't know if you can see it or not very well, but you can be most effective, right, or above average, approaching average, or the last one should just say you suck. It says least effective. And I have to tell you, at the beginning of this year, there were all these changes being made, and one of the reasons that I'm moving away is because of 50 kids in a room, but also because my voice hasn't been heard anymore. And I said, guys, the test that you guys are creating, so in some studies we get to actually make the test. I said, the test you're making isn't right. It's not connected to the standards, and everything that we're going to teach this year is not going to show on that test. And no one listened to me, and that's okay. But so for the first time ever, I think I've been doing it, 8 years or so. We've done SLO, student learning outcomes. I'm usually a 4. I think 1 year I was a 3, but I'm usually a 4. I've never been a 5, right? Never been most effective. I'm okay with that. But this year, I'm least effective. So my last year, the state of Ohio has a record that says now I'm least effective. And that's why the Ephesians 2:10 is on the board to remind me. But it still hurts because, man, my flesh is like, ooh, that hurts. And then it was really, really important to me that I do it right. So I looked at the scores, and I was only 2 students away from going to a number 2, which feels better, right? And so I looked back through all those tests because I get to grade them, and I'm like, could I kind of fudge these numbers and regrade it, and I could have, I suppose. I could probably even give rationale for doing it, but it's not right, is it? And so I couldn't do it, right? 2 students away to be up at 1, I just can't because you have to stand out. Even though no one will know, well, you guys do now, but, right? You have to do the right thing. And so I had to turn this paper into my boss, and I was like, look, I'm not going to make excuses about the test. You know how I feel about it, but I need you to know this result isn't because I quit or gave up on the students. I just need you to know it because I'm trying to stand out and have integrity and leave that way, right? And I also have I have tons of sick days, right? Because you get my first 10 years, I don't think I ever took a sick day. And I can't take them with me, right? And I can't give them to someone. I asked if I could give them to a teacher that's been kind of out all year, and they won't let me give them to her. And so I'm like, I could have, months ago, just stopped going to work and get paid. right? I even told my co-teacher, I got enough sick days, I could be gone. Her eyes are like, don't do that. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to do that because that's wrong, right? That's just not a stand-up kind of thing. And so those are the kind of little things or even big things that we are called to do, to stand out. And so my coworker, who I think went to church when she was younger but isn't necessarily doing that now, it's just one more thing for her to see that, like, oh, okay, so there's someone trying to live it out, doing his best. And who knows what will happen. But hopefully we're planting seeds, right? So it takes courage to stand out and do this, right? And so here's what I believe. And I heard someone else say this, so I can't take credit for it. But I would rather be remembered for standing out than forgotten for blending in, right? Because we know standing out is hard. It's super hard, right? So here's the deal, guys. If we don't stand out to make a statement. We stand out because God has called us to be different and set apart. If we make a statement, cool, but that's not why we do it, okay? And we will take our stand against the devil's schemes because we know you have to put the armor of God on, because it's not if, it's when the devil comes at you. And why do we do it? Well, because Jesus stood out and died on that cross for us. Right? He called us not to conform to the patterns of this world, but to be transformed by the renewal of our minds when we become a believer and committed to Jesus. All right? So we're to stand out. And let me end with this. And if Jeff and you guys want to come up, that's cool. As a teacher, it's really awesome when students come and they'll either email or I see them at every fast food restaurant. They work all around. Of course, I go to too many of them, but. Hey, Mr. Shooting, and they're always like, I miss you. And I'm like, yeah, in class you hated me. But anyway, it's really cool to have those positive things happen. But this year I've been seeing a lot of students, but I've had some of the adults in the building write me like notes and stuff too, because, well, there's been tears and hugs, and it's kind of an interesting place. And this is from a teacher that she calls me Bobby because she's known me since I was a little kid, was a neighbor down the street, and knew my mom really well before she passed. But anyway, I've worked with her my whole career at Whitten Woods, and here's what she wrote. So I didn't really know this was happening. This was me just trying to, be me, I guess, and stand out, and I didn't even realize it. So she wrote me this note. She goes, yesterday I witnessed a wonderful act of loving kindness when you were talking to so-and-so. It was a teacher who's in a bad place, right? Everything in your being was attentive, thoughtful, respectful, and caring. You are a perfect example of what would Jesus do in action, even though you're in turmoil on the inside. And that was really cool. Like, it was just, we got to do this to each other. We got to spur each other on. And then this other thing that happened maybe a few weeks before that is a good friend of mine, my mentor, if you will, the guy who taught me how to be a teacher, Matt Allender, great guy. He gave me this wood cross. He's a Catholic, and somebody came to his church, and this is actually made of olive wood from Bethlehem, like the Bethlehem, where that guy Jesus was born. That's pretty special, right? But he gave me this, and he wrote out this letter. It's pretty cool. And then at the end, he says, over the years, your faith in God has strengthened mine. Please accept this small token of my appreciation. And it's to have my mentor say that I've taught him something, that feels good, right? And maybe that's why I was there, because we just need to stand out, okay? So, guys, I'm gonna pray real quick, and if these guys would go ahead and they're going to play a song, and I really want you to be focusing on, while they're playing, what are those things, that bar, what's that standard that you have, and how can you stand out? And if you're not standing out and you're just blending in, maybe we pray for courage to be bold. All right, Heavenly Father, thanks for bringing us today. Thank you for not just Palm Sunday, but the whole Holy Week, if you will, as we get ready to celebrate Jesus on that cross. And then even more important, Jesus rising from the dead for us. Lord, I ask that you, the message that was given today, that it resonates in all of us, that you help us be bold. You help us stand out where we need to be stand up for those who need to be stood up for those who don't have a voice. I ask for protection over the ambush of the devil he's after us, and we just know that you will defeat him, and we call on you to do that, and keep us just centered on you, Lord. Protect us, those who aren't feeling good and those who are facing really difficult trials. We just ask that your peace and your joy and your comfort and your solution to whatever they're experiencing is in your hands. We know you'll take care of it in your way and in your time. Lord, just thank you. Thank you for loving us. And thank you for all that you do for us. And we right now, we just declare we're standing for you. Standing for you, Lord. Pray it all in Jesus' name. Amen.
Unreserved, unreserved.